I'm Samantha, 34, and for decades my family vacationed at Sunset Cove Resort in our treasured oceanfront villa. Last year, they voted to ban me from our annual gathering, claiming I'd abandoned family values for my career. What they didn't know was that my struggling startup had finally succeeded beyond imagination. If they thought they could erase me from family tradition, they never expected my response. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever felt underestimated by the people who should believe in you most. Sunset Cove Resort wasn't just a vacation spot for us. It was the backdrop to my entire childhood. My earliest memory is running across the warm sand at 4 years old, my grandfather chasing me as waves lapped at our feet. The oceanfront villa our grandparents reserved each summer stood on a small cliff overlooking the water, its weathered blue shutters and wide veranda a constant in my ever-changing young life. Our family traditions spanned 3 generations, starting when my grandparents discovered the resort in the 70s during their 5th anniversary. What began as a romantic getaway evolved into the cornerstone of our family identity. Every August, without fail, aunts, uncles, and cousins would descend upon Sunset Cove, filling the 6-bedroom villa with laughter, arguments, and the scent of sunscreen. Those 2 weeks each summer defined my childhood calendar. School years weren't measured September to June, but from one Sunset Cove trip to the next. We had rituals that seemed sacred. Beach bonfires where grandfather told ghost stories that made us huddle together, cousin competitions ranging from sandcastle building to swimming races, and holiday-worthy meals served on the veranda as the sun melted into the ocean. My Aunt Barbara, my mother's older sister, appointed herself the unofficial matriarch after my grandmother passed. She organized the sleeping arrangements, meal schedules, and activities with military precision. My Uncle Mark, her husband, balanced her controlling nature with easy smiles and peaceful interventions when tensions rose. My cousins Jessica and Rachel, Barbara's daughters, were 2 and 4 years older than me. They formed a tight alliance, often leaving me feeling like an outsider despite blood ties. My grandparents were the glue. Grandmother with her boundless patience, smoothing ruffled feelings with homemade cookies and quiet words. Grandfather with his booming laugh that seemed to echo across the water. While my cousins gravitated toward Barbara's approval, I found sanctuary with my grandfather. He would wake me before dawn, and we'd walk the shoreline collecting unusual shells while he asked about my dreams and ambitions. "You've got a mind for business, Sammy," he told me when I was 12 and had organized the cousins into a profitable seashell jewelry venture that sold to other resort guests. Don't let anyone dim that spark. When my grandmother passed, the tradition wavered, but grandfather insisted we continue. When he was diagnosed with cancer 6 years ago, the summer trips took on new significance. During what would be his final visit to Sunset Cove, he gathered us on the veranda. "This place holds our history," he said, his voice weaker, but his eyes still bright. "Promise me you'll keep coming. Promise me you'll stay connected." We all nodded solemnly, even as I noticed Barbara's calculating look, already planning how she would reshape the tradition in her image. That evening, as grandfather rested, I sat beside his bed, holding his weathered hand. "I worry about you, Sammy," he whispered. "You're so different from the others. Promise me you won't let them push you out." "I promise," I said, not fully understanding then how prophetic his concern would prove. On his deathbed 3 months later, his last coherent words to the assembled family were about keeping our bond strong. "The villa at Sunset Cove," he said. "Remember who we are there." Even then, I sensed the tension. Barbara's hand gripping her daughter's shoulders too tightly. The way conversations would stop when I entered rooms. The subtle competition that had always existed now lacked my grandparents' moderating influence. Still, I believed in the promise we'd made. Family was family, and Sunset Cove would always be our common ground, the place where differences faded against the constancy of ocean waves and shared memories. I couldn't have imagined how wrong I was. After graduating with my business degree, I faced the first major crossroads that would eventually lead to my family's betrayal. While my cousins Jessica and Rachel followed conventional paths, corporate jobs, engagements to suitable men, suburban homes, I was drawn to the emerging tech industry and the possibility of building something from nothing. A startup? Barbara's voice dripped with skepticism during Thanksgiving dinner the year after grandfather died. Isn't that just a fancy word for unemployed? When are you going to get a real job like your cousins? My mother offered weak defense while Uncle Mark studied his plate. My father, always conflict-averse, changed the subject to safer territory. That first year after college, I missed the family Easter gathering because I was working through the weekend on a project. By summer, when Sunset Cove approached, I had co-founded my company, TravelMind, an AI-powered travel concierge service. We were operating out of my apartment, living on ramen and hope. Of course we understand, my mother said when I called to explain I couldn't afford the time away. I heard Barbara in the background. Tell her the villa won't stand empty just because she's too busy for family. Rachel posted dozens of photos that August. The family gathered on the familiar veranda, sunset boat rides, cousins' children building sandcastles where we once played. I felt the first twinge of exclusion, but told myself it was temporary. Success required sacrifice. The second year, I missed Christmas due to investor meetings. By then, Barbara had stopped calling altogether, communicating through my mother or occasional stiff emails about family matters. Samantha has chosen her path, she told everyone who would listen. Some people just aren't family-oriented. Jessica, who had once been my childhood confidant during those summer weeks, now posted cryptic social media comments about people who forget where they came from. Rachel was more direct, texting me, "Granddad would be disappointed you're breaking your promise." That cut deep, but I was too immersed in the startup struggle to properly defend myself. TravelMind had secured modest funding, but we were still far from profitable. I'd moved into the office to save on rent, showering at the gym and working 18-hour days. Meanwhile, family events continued. Jessica had her first child. Rachel got promoted. Barbara orchestrated lavish celebration dinners that I learned about through social media. The annual Sunset Cove trip remained the crown jewel of family togetherness, increasingly defined by my absence. "They call you the ghost cousin," my younger second cousin Lily told me innocently during a rare appearance at a family birthday. "Aunt Barbara says you think you're too good for us now." By year 3, TravelMind was facing a critical juncture. Our initial funding was running out, and our user growth, while promising, wasn't enough to attract the next round of investment we desperately needed. I sold my car, drained my savings, and convinced my small team to defer salaries, betting everything on a major platform upgrade. Family gossip painted me as delusional, chasing impossible dreams while rejecting the security my cousins had wisely chosen. Jessica, now working in banking, offered unsolicited advice about when to cut your losses. Rachel, advancing in her marketing career and planning her wedding, made comments about growing up and facing reality. Then, against all odds, our breakthrough arrived. A travel industry veteran stumbled across our app while planning his anniversary trip. Impressed with our technology, he contacted me directly about potential investment. 2 weeks of intense negotiations later, TravelMind secured funding that not only saved the company, but valued it at $20 million. Suddenly, for years of struggle transformed into vindication. The investment would allow us to scale operations, hire desperately needed talent, and implement the vision I'd fought so hard to keep alive. It happened in May, just as the family began planning the annual August trip to Sunset Cove. For the first time in years, I could genuinely afford the time away. More importantly, I wanted to share my success with a family who had doubted me, not out of spite, but hoping for reconciliation. I imagined surprising them with the news, perhaps finally earning Barbara's approval and silencing the whispers about my poor life choices. I called my mother immediately. "I'll be coming to Sunset Cove this year," I announced. "I have amazing news to share with everyone." "Oh, Samantha," she said, her voice unnaturally high. "That's wonderful, sweetie. Let me talk to Barbara about the arrangements. She handles all that now, you know." I felt a flicker of unease at her tone, but dismissed it. After all, I was finally returning to family tradition, keeping the promise made to my grandfather. What could possibly go wrong? 2 weeks after sharing my intention to join the family at Sunset Cove, I still hadn't heard any confirmation about arrangements. With our company now securely funded and a capable management team in place, I had blocked the 2 weeks in August for the family vacation, my first real break in 4 years. I called Barbara directly on a Sunday evening, expecting the usual cool reception, but not what actually transpired. "Hello, Samantha," she answered with practiced politeness. "How's your little project going?" "Actually, it's going incredibly well," I replied, choosing to ignore the diminutive reference to my company. "That's partly why I'm calling. I wanted to confirm the sleeping arrangements for Sunset Cove. Mom mentioned you're handling all that now." A pause stretched across the line. "Oh," Barbara said finally. "I thought your mother would have told you. We're actually full up this year." "Full?" I repeated, confused. "The villa has 6 bedrooms. There's always been room." "Well, Jessica's boys need their own room now that they're getting older. And Rachel's fiancé, Tom, is joining us for the first time. Plus his parents wanted to experience our family tradition, so we've invited them too." My mind raced through the math. Even with these additions, there should still be space. The villa had accommodated up to 16 people in the past. "I'm sure we can make it work," I insisted. "I don't mind sleeping on the pull-out couch in the sunroom like I did when the cousins from Seattle visited." Another loaded silence. "I'm sorry, Samantha, but we've already finalized everything. Maybe next year you can join if you give us more notice." The conversation ended shortly after, leaving me stunned and suspicious. I opened Instagram almost unconsciously, scrolling to Rachel's profile. Her latest post showed beach supplies being packed, with a caption about family vacation countdown #Sunset Cove Resort #family tradition. In the comments, someone I didn't recognize, Melissa, had written, "Can't wait for my first time at the famous family villa. Tom talks about it constantly." Rachel had replied, "So excited to have you join our tradition. You'll love the master suite, best view in the house." The master suite. My grandparents' room, the one no one had used since their passing out of respect. They were giving it to Rachel's future sister-in-law, while telling me there was no space for actual family. My hands shook as I called Barbara back. "I just saw Rachel's post," I said when she answered, not bothering with pleasantries. "You're giving the master suite to Tom's sister, but claiming there's no room for me?" Barbara's voice turned icy. "I think it's time for some honesty, Samantha. The family took a vote. We decided it would be better if you didn't join us this year." A vote. The word felt like a physical blow. You voted to exclude me from a family tradition? You excluded yourself for years. Barbara's control finally cracked. "You've made it abundantly clear that your precious company matters more than family. You've missed birthdays, holidays, christenings. You broke your promise to your grandfather while the rest of us have honored it. And now that it's convenient for you, you expect us to welcome you back with open arms?" I struggled to form words through the tightness in my throat. "Did everyone vote against me?" "It was unanimous," she stated flatly. "Even Uncle Mark? He had always been my quiet ally." Barbara hesitated. "Mark understands the importance of family unity. By excluding family members. By recognizing who's actually committed to this family," she snapped. "This isn't just about vacation, Samantha. It's about the choices you've made consistently for years. We need reliability, not someone who drops in when it suits her schedule." After ending the call, I sat motionless in my apartment, the phone still clutched in my hand. Unanimous. They had all agreed I didn't belong anymore. I opened my laptop and found myself scrolling through old family photos from Sunset Cove. My grandfather's smiling face looked back at me from a Sunset Beach portrait taken during his last summer. "Promise me you won't let them push you out," he had said. I had failed him. That night began a spiral of emotional devastation unlike anything I'd experienced. Even during the darkest days of my startup struggles, I'd had the abstract notion of family to fall back on. Now that foundation had crumbled. Sleep became elusive. Food lost its taste. At work, where I should have been celebrating our funding success, I found myself staring blankly at my computer screen, unable to focus on simple tasks. My assistant Megan noticed first. "Sam, you've worn the same outfit 3 days running, and you haven't touched the lunch I brought you. What's going on?" I broke down in her office, the story spilling out between sobs. The family vote. Barbara's cold dismissal. The betrayal of being replaced so easily after decades of shared history. "You should still go," Megan said after listening patiently. "Not to the villa, obviously. But book a room at the resort. Don't give them the power to take this place from you too. And do what? Watch them enjoy family tradition from across the beach. Reclaim it for yourself," she said firmly. "Your grandfather loved that place, and he loved you. Don't let them rewrite that history." Something in her words resonated. That night, I called Sunset Cove Resort and reserved a modest garden view room for the same 2 weeks in August. Not to confront my family or create drama, but to honor the connection to my grandfather in the only way left available to me. What I couldn't possibly have known then was how this small act of defiance would cascade into something that would transform not just my relationship with my family, but the future of Sunset Cove itself. August arrived with oppressive heat and the weight of anticipation. I drove the familiar coastal route to Sunset Cove Resort with windows down, letting salt air and memories wash over me. The resort entrance hadn't changed, the same weathered wooden sign, the same flowering bushes flanking the narrow road that wound through pine trees before revealing the ocean vista. My room was in the garden terrace, the resort's oldest and most modest accommodation building. From my small balcony, I could just glimpse the red-tiled roof of the family villa perched on its premium spot overlooking the cove. Cars were already parked in its private driveway, the gathering happening without me. After unpacking, I ventured to the resort's restaurant for dinner, deliberately choosing a late hour to minimize chances of family encounters. The universe, however, had other plans. "Samantha?" Jessica's voice cut through the ambient dining room chatter just as I was being seated. She sat at a corner table with Rachel, both frozen in apparent shock at my appearance. "Hello," I replied with forced casualness, nodding to the hostess to continue to my table. Rachel recovered first, hurrying over. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, as if I'd crashed a private event rather than simply existing at a public resort. "Vacationing," I answered simply. "Just like you." "Does Mom know you're here?" Jessica had joined us, glancing nervously toward the door, as if Barbara might materialize. "I don't report my whereabouts to your mother," I said. "I'm staying in the garden terrace. Don't worry, I won't intrude on your villa time." Their discomfort was palpable as they retreated to their table, whispering urgently. I ordered a glass of wine and tried to ignore the weight of their stares. As I waited for my meal, I overheard snippets of conversation from resort staff behind me. "Mr. Jenkins finally decided to sell," one waitress murmured to another. "After all these years. Word is corporate developers are circling." "End of an era," her colleague replied. "My mom worked here when she was my age. Can't imagine this place turned into another soulless chain resort." I found myself oddly disturbed by this news. Sunset Cove had always seemed eternal, unchanging. The thought of it transformed into a standardized resort experience felt wrong, like a betrayal of my grandfather's memory. The next morning, I avoided the main beach where the family would gather and instead explored parts of the resort I'd never visited during our villa-centric stays. Near the tennis courts, I noticed an elderly man inspecting a broken fence, directing maintenance staff with the authority of ownership. "Excuse me," the resort manager intercepted him. "Mr. Jenkins, we've got those financial documents ready for your review." Mr. Jenkins, the owner himself. On impulse, I approached him after the manager departed. "Mr. Jenkins? I'm Samantha Mitchell. My family has been coming to your resort for over 30 years. His weathered face brightened. "Mitchell, the Villa family. Of course. Your grandfather was one of my favorite guests. A real gentleman." "You knew my grandfather personally?" "Franklin and I shared many Sunset whiskeys on that veranda of yours. He was one of the few guests who became a true friend." He squinted at me. You're the granddaughter with the business mind, aren't you?
He talked about you.
A lump formed in my throat. He did. Oh, yes. Very proud of your entrepreneurial spirit. Said you reminded him of himself in his younger days. We walked toward the main building, Mr. Jenkins sharing stories about the resort's history. Founded in 1952 by his father, Sunset Cove had remained fiercely independent while neighboring properties were absorbed by hotel chains. But nothing lasts forever, he sighed as we reached his office. At 78, I need to think about the future. My children have their own careers, no interest in running a resort. I overheard you're selling, I ventured. His expression clouded. 3 corporate hotel groups are bidding. All with the same soulless plans, triple the room rates, gut the historic buildings, add a spa wing, and overpriced restaurants. He gestured toward framed photos covering his walls, the resort through decades of evolution. 68 years of family history, about to be erased for quarterly profit reports. You don't have other options? I've turned down their offers twice, but reality is stubborn. The property needs significant investment to remain competitive. Maintenance costs increase every year. He smiled sadly. What I really want is a buyer who loves this place, who will preserve its character while ensuring its future. But unicorns are rare in business. As we continued talking, resort staff dropped by with questions or updates, each interaction revealing the family-like bonds between Mr. Jenkins and employees who had worked there for decades. Maria's grandmother helped my mother with housekeeping in the 50s, he explained after the head housekeeper left. Carlos in maintenance is a third-generation employee. Your family isn't the only one with deep roots here. Later, as I walked the property, I encountered Carlos repairing a deck railing. When I introduced myself, his face lit up with recognition. Mitchell family. Your grandfather helped me get this job when I was just 17. He wrote me a recommendation letter. He laughed. He also taught me to play chess on that veranda. Said I needed strategic thinking for life, not just for games. Throughout the day, I collected these unexpected connections. Resort staff who remember my grandfather not just as a guest, but as someone who had touched their lives personally. The bartender recounted how he'd established a staff scholarship fund. The gift shop manager showed me crafts still sold there because my grandfather had encouraged her artistic talents decades ago. That evening, I sat on my small balcony watching the sunset, mind whirling with half-formed ideas. My phone rang, my company's financial advisor returning my earlier call. Just running preliminary numbers based on what you told me, he said. With your company valuation and personal equity, purchasing a property in that price range would be ambitious, but potentially feasible, especially if structured creatively with the current owner maintaining certain interests. Send me the analysis, I requested, a plan crystallizing with startling clarity. The next morning, I requested a formal meeting with Mr. Jenkins. His surprise was evident when I stated my purpose directly. You're interested in buying Sunset Cove? He studied me with newfound intensity. May I ask why? This place shaped my childhood. It holds my most precious family memories. My grandfather loved it here. I paused. And from what I've learned, he considered buying it himself once. Mr. Jenkins nodded slowly. In the 90s, during another financial rough patch, he approached me about becoming a silent partner, helping with capital improvements. We discussed it seriously before he decided his business needed his full investment at that time. This revelation felt like a sign, a connection reaching across time from my grandfather to me. I've recently had success with my technology company, I explained. I have the resources to make a serious offer. More importantly, I share your vision for preserving what makes Sunset Cove special while ensuring its future. Over the next 3 days, between careful avoidance of my family, I engaged in intense negotiations with Mr. Jenkins and our respective advisors. I proposed a structure that would allow him to remain involved as a consultant, preserving his legacy while transferring ownership. The staff would keep their jobs, he asked during our final meeting. With improved benefits, I confirmed. And we'd establish a formal educational assistance program named after your father. On the 5th day of my stay, As my family remained oblivious in their villa, I signed preliminary papers making me the new owner of Sunset Cove Resort, contingent on final financing and due diligence. Mr. Jenkins shook my hand with tears in his eyes. Your grandfather would be proud, Samantha. I believe you're exactly the caretaker this place needs. As I walked back to my room, I glimpsed Barbara and my cousins heading to the beach, laughing together in their familiar exclusionary bubble. They had no idea that the ground beneath their precious family tradition had just shifted fundamentally, or that the niece they had deemed unworthy of family inclusion now owned the very sand beneath their feet. For the next several days, I maintained my low profile while secretly participating in transition meetings with resort management. Mr. Jenkins introduced me as a strategic consultant to avoid premature rumors about the ownership change. Together, we began implementing immediate improvements, addressing maintenance backlogs, upgrading technology systems, and reviewing staffing needs. I specifically instructed that service to the villa should continue exactly as usual. No disruptions, I told Maria, the housekeeping manager. I don't want my family's vacation affected in any way. On day 8 of my stay, however, the inevitable collision of my past and future could no longer be avoided. I had approved a minor but necessary electrical repair affecting the villa's section of the property, requiring a brief power interruption during mid-morning when most guests would be at the beach. Unfortunately, Barbara had chosen that morning to work on her laptop in the villa. When the power went out, she immediately called the front desk with a blistering complaint. Mrs. Peterson was quite upset, the manager reported to me during our afternoon meeting. She demanded to know why she wasn't personally informed, stated that her family's 30-year patronage deserves special consideration, and insisted on speaking with the owner about declining service standards. Mr. Jenkins raised his eyebrows at me. How would you like to handle this? I considered the options. This confrontation was inevitable. Perhaps it was better to control when and how it happened. Schedule a meeting for tomorrow morning, I decided. Tell her Mr. Jenkins and the new management team will address her concerns personally. The next day, I arrived early at the resort's main office, selecting a seat behind the impressive desk that had belonged to 3 generations of the Jenkins family. Mr. Jenkins positioned himself in a side chair as a supportive presence. At precisely 10 o'clock, the receptionist announced, "The Peterson family is here, Ms. Mitchell." The door opened to reveal not just Barbara, but Uncle Mark, Jessica, and Rachel as well, a family delegation prepared for battle. Their collective expressions of shock upon seeing me behind the desk would have been comical under different circumstances. Samantha? Barbara recovered first, her voice sharp with confusion. What are you doing here? Where's Mr. Jenkins? Good morning, I replied calmly. Mr. Jenkins is right here. Please, everyone take a seat. They complied automatically, still processing my unexpected presence. I believe you wanted to discuss the resort's management, I continued. I'm happy to address your concerns as the new owner of Sunset Cove Resort. The silence that followed was deafening. Barbara's mouth opened and closed without sound. Jessica gripped the armrests of her chair. Rachel's eyes widened to perfect circles. Only Uncle Mark's expression was unreadable, his gaze steady on my face. Owner? Barbara finally managed. That's not possible. The papers were finalized yesterday, Mr. Jenkins confirmed. Samantha is now the principal owner of Sunset Cove Resort, including all properties and facilities. I'm staying on as a consultant during the transition. This is about the villa, isn't it? Barbara's voice rose accusingly. This is your spite move because we didn't include you this year. How childishly vindictive. I maintained my composure. This business decision has nothing to do with family matters. Sunset Cove needed new investment to secure its future, and I was in a position to provide that. The timing is coincidental. Coincidental. Barbara scoffed. You expect us to believe that? Mom, Jessica interrupted, her business mind clearly processing faster than her mother's emotions. This is clearly a major acquisition. Samantha couldn't have arranged this in a few weeks just to get back at us. Rachel studied me with new eyes. Your company must be doing well, she observed, sounding genuinely surprised. It is, I acknowledged simply. Uncle Mark finally spoke. Congratulations, Samantha. That's quite an achievement. Barbara shot him a betrayed look before turning back to me. So, what happens now? Are you kicking us out of our villa?
Of course not, I said.
Your vacation continues exactly as planned. In fact, I've been working to ensure service improvements property-wide. I outlined my vision for Sunset Cove's future, preserving its character and family-friendly atmosphere while modernizing facilities and expanding programming. We're creating a special legacy wing to honor longtime guests who have made this place part of their family traditions. Including our villa? Rachel asked. The villa section will be completely renovated next off-season, I explained. Updated amenities while preserving its historic character. Barbara leaned forward with narrowed eyes. And next year? Will our family still have access to the villa we've used for decades? Here was the moment of truth, the power to exact revenge, now literally in my hands. I could feel everyone holding their breath, including Mr. Jenkins. My gaze moved across their faces. Barbara's defensive hostility, Jessica's calculating assessment, Rachel's uncertain vulnerability, and Uncle Mark's quiet watchfulness. I thought of my grandfather's words about not letting them push me out, but I also remembered his deeper lessons about family and integrity. The Mitchell-Peterson family has a meaningful history with this property, I said carefully. That deserves respect. However, respect must go both ways. I leaned forward, meeting Barbara's gaze directly. Family traditions matter deeply to me, something you apparently forgot when you took a vote to exclude me. Going forward, I expect mutual respect as both a family member and as the property owner. Are you threatening us? Barbara bristled. I'm establishing boundaries, I corrected. The villa will remain available to our family, but decisions about who stays there will be made inclusively, not by unilateral decrees or secret votes. Uncle Mark nodded almost imperceptibly. Jessica studied her hands. Rachel looked thoughtful. You can't dictate how our family operates, Barbara insisted, though her voice had lost some conviction. No, but I can decide how my resort operates, I replied evenly. And I believe my grandfather would want his wish for family unity honored in substance, not just in form. As they filed out minutes later, emotions still simmering beneath superficial politeness, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. The confrontation had gone as well as could be expected, but bridges rebuilt under duress were rarely as strong as those formed naturally. Uncle Mark lingered behind the others. Your grandfather would be proud, he said quietly. Not just of your success, but of how you handled this moment. You chose dignity over vengeance. His words stayed with me as I watched my family retreat toward their villa, our villa, across the carefully maintained resort grounds that now belonged to me. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted, but whether that would heal or further fracture our family remained to be seen. Over the next 6 months, I divided my time between running my technology company and overseeing Sunset Cove's transformation. After my family's vacation ended, with minimal further interaction between us, I relocated temporarily to the resort's owner's cottage to immerse myself in the property's operations. September brought contractors, architects, and designers, all carefully selected for their sensitivity to the resort's heritage. We're not reinventing, I explained repeatedly. We're restoring and enhancing what makes this place special. The staff, initially wary of new ownership, gradually warmed to my approach. Unlike corporate buyers who would have immediately cut positions to improve margins, I invested in the people who had maintained Sunset Cove's character for decades. My father would have approved, Mr. Jenkins told me one evening as we reviewed renovation plans. He always said Sunset Cove was really about the people, not the buildings. As I split time between conference calls for TravelMind and meetings about resort renovations, I discovered unexpected joy in connecting with the property on a deeper level. Maria, the housekeeping manager, invited me to review the resort's archives, boxes of photographs, guest books, and memorabilia spanning nearly 7 decades. Most owners wouldn't care about this old stuff, she remarked, helping me sort through dusty albums. This isn't just old stuff, I replied. It's the soul of the place. In those archives, I discovered treasures that connected me to my own history. A faded photograph from 1992 showed my grandfather standing proudly beside a much younger Mr. Jenkins at a resort anniversary celebration. Another captured my entire family on the beach during my 10th birthday, my grandfather hoisting me onto his shoulders while my cousins built sandcastles nearby. The most surprising discovery came when Carlos mentioned an old storage room behind the maintenance shed. Mr. Jenkins Sr. kept everything, he explained, unlocking a door that clearly hadn't been opened in years. Among the dusty furniture and forgotten equipment, we found a leather-bound ledger containing resort records from the 1980s. Within its pages, I discovered notes about a loan my grandfather had provided during a difficult financial period. Your grandfather saved this place once, Mr. Jenkins confirmed when I asked him about it. Hurricane damage in '85 had us on the brink of closing. Insurance wasn't enough. Franklin stepped in with capital that kept us afloat until the banks would lend again. Never wanted recognition, just asked that we maintain the character of the resort he loved. This revelation deepened my connection to both the property and my grandfather's legacy. I wasn't just preserving a vacation spot. I was continuing his stewardship of a place that had mattered deeply to him. As renovations progressed, I established a small museum space in the main building displaying historical photographs and memorabilia. Heritage Hall would honor the generations of families, both guests and staff, who had made Sunset Cove special. Through the fall and winter, I received occasional updates about my family through indirect channels. Uncle Mark emailed a brief but warm Thanksgiving greeting. Jessica sent a professionally cordial Christmas card featuring her children. Even Rachel extended a tentative olive branch, messaging to ask if I would attend her wedding in April. Barbara maintained her distance, though I heard through resort staff that she had called twice inquiring about reservation policies for the coming summer. In February, Jessica made an unexpected visit to the resort while in the area for a business conference. I showed her the renovations in progress, including the modernized spa facilities and updated dining options. This is impressive, she admitted as we walked the property. You've kept the feeling of the place while making it feel fresh. Over lunch on the restaurant terrace, with winter sunlight sparkling on the cove, we cautiously navigated toward more personal territory. I should have stood up for you, she said finally, when Mom orchestrated that vote. It wasn't unanimous, by the way. Uncle Mark refused to participate. But you didn't stop it, I noted without accusation. Jessica studied her water glass. Family dynamics are complicated. Mom has always been influential. After Granddad died, it got worse. It was easier to go along than face her disapproval. I understand that better than you might think. Rachel feels terrible too, she added. She's struggled with Mom's expectations her whole life. We all have in different ways. And Barbara? Jessica sighed. Mom's pride is her strongest quality and her biggest flaw. She's conflicted. Impressed by what you've accomplished, but threatened by it too. She defined herself as the family matriarch after Grandma died. Your success challenges that identity. This conversation opened a channel for gradual healing. Jessica began calling occasionally with family updates. Rachel invited me to her bridal shower. Small steps toward reconnection occurred naturally rather than forced. By April, as Sunset Cove prepared for its grand reopening before the summer season, the property had been thoughtfully transformed. The historic buildings maintained their character, but with modern amenities. New activities and programs had been developed for guests of all ages. The staff operated with renewed pride and purpose. The family villa had received special attention, preserving its beloved features while enhancing comfort and functionality. I had spent hours selecting furnishings and details that would honor our shared memories while creating space for new ones. As the reopening approached, I faced the decision I had been contemplating since the confrontation 6 months earlier: how to handle my family going forward. The easy path would be to maintain the professional distance established since summer. The harder, but potentially more healing approach would require vulnerability from all sides. Standing on the villa's veranda one evening, Watching the same sunset that had framed countless family gatherings, I made my choice. I would offer reconciliation without expectation, extending the invitation my grandfather would have wanted without demanding response. That night, I drafted personal invitations to the resort's grand reopening celebration, addressing them to each family member individually. For Barbara's, I added a handwritten note. Some traditions are worth preserving, even when they require change to survive. This place meant everything to grandfather. Perhaps it can still mean something to all of us. I had no way of knowing if they would accept, or if the bridges between us could truly be rebuilt. But as I sealed the envelopes, I felt a sense of peace with my decision, honoring both my grandfather's wish for family unity and my own need for self-respect. The transformation of Sunset Cove was nearly complete. Whether my family could undergo a similar renewal remained to be seen. The morning of Sunset Cove's grand reopening dawned with perfect weather, clear skies, gentle breezes, and temperatures that seemed custom-ordered for the occasion. Staff bustled about making final preparations for the afternoon ceremony and evening reception. As resort owner, I would officially welcome guests, community members, and local officials to the revitalized property. The question weighing on my mind, however, had nothing to do with speeches or ceremonial ribbon cuttings. I hadn't received RSVPs from my family members. The invitations had been delivered 3 weeks ago, but only silence followed. "The setup looks wonderful, Mr. Jenkins commented, joining me for a pre-opening walkthrough. At 80, he had become both mentor and friend during the transformation process. "Do you think I'm foolish?" I asked suddenly, hoping they'll come. He understood immediately. "Hope is never foolish, Samantha. Family reconciliations are rarely tidy affairs. They happen in fits and starts, sometimes over years." By noon, media representatives arrived for previews. Local business owners and community leaders began gathering in the main courtyard where a small stage had been set up. I retreated to my office to change into my formal attire, stomach fluttering with both professional and personal anticipation. At 1 o'clock, as I reviewed my speech notes one final time, a soft knock interrupted my thoughts. "There's someone here to see you," my assistant said, opening the door wider to reveal Uncle Mark standing behind her. "Mark," I exclaimed, rising quickly. "Hope I'm not too early," he said, stepping forward to embrace me. "Proud of you, kiddo. This place looks amazing." Relief flooded through me. "You came." "Wouldn't miss it," he replied simply. "Your grandfather would have loved what you've done here." We walked together toward the ceremony area, Mark sharing updates about his recent retirement plans. As we approached the gathering crowd, I spotted 2 familiar figures near the refreshment table. "Jessica and Rachel came too," I whispered, emotion tightening my throat. Jessica waved tentatively when she saw us. Rachel, beautiful in a summer dress, offered a nervous smile. Their husband stood beside them, looking slightly uncomfortable but present. "We wanted to support you," Jessica said when we reached them. "This is really impressive, Sam." Rachel nodded agreement. "The place looks incredible, better than ever, but still feels like Sunset Cove." I introduced them to key staff members and local officials, the family awkwardness gradually easing as we fell into conversation about the renovations. As ceremony time approached, I scanned the growing crowd, trying not to feel disappointed about Barbara's absence. "She's still struggling with this," Mark said quietly, noting my search.
"Give her time."
The ceremony proceeded beautifully. I delivered my speech about honoring tradition while embracing necessary change, acknowledging Mr. Jenkins' family legacy and the generations of staff who had created Sunset Cove's special atmosphere. After cutting the ribbon and leading tours of the renovated facilities, we gathered for the evening reception on the main lawn overlooking the water. As twilight approached and soft lighting illuminated the property, I found myself surrounded by well-wishers. Through a break in the crowd, I suddenly glimpsed a familiar figure standing uncertainly at the reception's edge.
"Barbara."
She wore a formal blue dress I recognized from family weddings, her posture rigid with discomfort. Mark spotted her simultaneously and moved to her side, speaking words I couldn't hear. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded and allowed him to lead her toward me. "Congratulations," she said stiffly when we stood face to face. "The renovations are very tasteful." Coming from Barbara, this qualified as effusive praise. "Thank you for coming," I replied sincerely. "It means a lot to me." An awkward silence followed before she added, "The Heritage Hall is quite moving." I didn't expect to see so many photos of our family included. I had created a special section dedicated to longtime guest families, with the Mitchell-Peterson gatherings prominently featured. My grandfather's contributions to the resort were specifically highlighted. "Would you like to see the villa?" I offered impulsively. "I've kept most things the same, but I think you'll appreciate the improvements." After a moment's consideration, she nodded. I quietly arranged for Jessica and Rachel to join us, and our small family procession made its way to the familiar blue-shuttered building on the point. Entering the villa together felt momentous, the first time we had all been there since the previous summer's exclusion and subsequent confrontation. I had preserved the layout and character while updating furnishings, kitchen facilities, and bathrooms. Most importantly, I had restored original elements that had been modernized over decades, returning the villa to something closer to how it appeared when my grandparents first visited. The original fireplace stonework, Barbara noted, touching the newly exposed rock that had been covered by 70s-era paneling. "I remember this from when I was a girl." "And look at the veranda railings," Jessica added. "They're back to the turned spindles from the old photos." We moved through the rooms, memories surfacing with each space. In the master bedroom, my grandparents' room, I had installed a custom headboard crafted from salvaged wood from the resort's original dock. "Grandfather would have loved that," Rachel said softly. At sunset, we gathered naturally on the veranda, the sky painting itself in familiar oranges and pinks over the cove. Someone opened wine. Conversation remained cautious, but gradually warmed as we shared memories of summers past. "I never told you," Barbara said suddenly during a lull, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Your grandfather asked me to watch out for you specifically. Before he died." I turned to her in surprise. "He worried you were too independent for your own good," she continued. "Too much like him. He asked me to make sure you stayed connected to family." A bitter laugh escaped her. "I failed spectacularly at that, didn't I? Driving you further away instead." "We all contributed to the distance," I acknowledged. "Including me. My absence from family events wasn't entirely about work. It was easier than facing disapproval." "I was hard on you," Barbara admitted. "I saw you pulling away from family traditions, and it felt like a rejection of everything I valued. Everything your grandfather valued." "He valued authenticity too," Uncle Mark interjected gently. "Following your own path." As night fell, the conversation gradually shifted from past hurts toward future possibilities. The unspoken question hung in the air until Rachel finally voiced it. "So, what happens with the villa now? For this summer?" I had given this considerable thought. "It remains our family gathering place," I answered, "but with some new understanding between us. No exclusions. No ultimatums. We're adults who can communicate directly about arrangements and expectations." "That sounds reasonable," Jessica nodded. Barbara seemed to struggle internally before adding, "I may have been overzealous in appointing myself family coordinator. Perhaps decisions could be more collaborative going forward." Coming from Barbara, this represented monumental growth. As the evening concluded and we prepared to leave the villa, I paused in the living room where photographs of 3 generations of our family lined the walls. "Grandfather believed this place held our history," I said. "He was right, but not in the way I originally thought. It's not about the building or even the location. It's about the choice to come together, to work through difficulties, to create shared memories even when it's complicated." Uncle Mark squeezed my shoulder. "Well said." Outside, the renovated resort glowed with warm light, a perfect blend of cherished tradition and necessary renewal. My family moved ahead down the path while I locked the villa door. For a moment, I could almost feel my grandfather's presence beside me on the veranda, His pride in what I'd accomplished professionally, but more importantly, in finding my way back to family connection without sacrificing my identity or dignity. The journey hadn't been what I expected. Being excluded from family tradition had hurt deeply, but that wound had led to unexpected growth and, ultimately, to a more authentic relationship with both my family and my grandfather's legacy. As I joined the others walking back toward the main resort, I felt a sense of completion. The family villa would remain our gathering place, but on new terms, terms of mutual respect rather than obligation or control. By purchasing the resort that housed our tradition, I hadn't just acquired property. I'd created the opportunity for transformation that extended beyond buildings to the relationships within them. Some traditions are worth preserving, even when they require change to survive. Family, I had learned, worked the same way. What about you? Have you ever been excluded from something important to you? How did you respond? Did you walk away or find a creative way to transform the situation? Share your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that exclusion doesn't have to be the end of the story. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most powerful response to rejection is creating something better than what you were denied.